The very day my husband's first love became a widow, he asked me for a divorce, with our daughter standing firmly by his side. That silver-haired man didn't hesitate. He turned his back on me and went straight to marry his old flame. Their wedding photos, radiating pure joy, quickly went viral after they posted them online. The entire internet was swept up in their love story. And that's exactly when I walked into their wedding reception. He stumbled toward me, unsteady on his feet, but his hand remained tightly clasped with his first love's. His voice shook as he said, "Cynthia, don't ruin my wedding day. Let's part peacefully." I just smiled. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I came bearing a grand gift for both of you." Not long ago, out of nowhere, my husband Albert asked for a divorce. I was taken completely by surprise. At 70 years old, what on earth could have sparked such a decision? Albert didn't try to soften the blow. Kristen's husband passed away. She needs me now. I want to spend the rest of my life with her. Shock and heartbreak hit me first, but almost immediately, a voice inside me started questioning. Had I failed somewhere? Was this just another of his whims? Surely this old man was being unreasonable. How else could he say something so absurd? But no matter what I said or pleaded, his mind was made up. He was determined to leave me. It all happened so fast. Just 2 weeks before, he was at home as usual, reading the newspaper with his glasses perched on his nose, waiting for me to bring him his meal. And now? He was married to someone else. I scanned the room calmly. The place was packed. Albert's students, old friends, and Kristen's devoted fans filled every corner. Someone in the crowd was holding a huge bouquet, ready to hand it to the happy couple. That someone was my daughter, Lisa. The moment Lisa saw me, she shoved the bouquet into the hands of the person next to her and hurried through the crowd toward us. Her voice was laced with frustration as she said, "Mom, what are you doing here? Today's Dad's big day. If you're here to cause a scene, don't blame me if I ask you to leave. Dad and Aunt Kristen were kept apart for nearly 40 years because of you. Haven't you had him long enough?" "Because of me?" I asked, shocked. "What do you think I am?" Lisa looked at me with a steady, cold gaze. "Dad is a respected scholar with students all over the country. He's a man of influence, and you're just an uneducated housewife." Kristen gently tugged Lisa's hand. "You shouldn't speak to your mother that way," she said softly. "She's the housewife who raised you and cared for your father all these years. She's had a hard life too." Lisa's expression softened for a moment at Kristen's words. She sighed and muttered, "Sure, Kristen, if you say so." Then she turned back to me, still impatient but less harsh. "Mom, you shouldn't be here. This is Dad and Aunt Kristen's wedding. You don't belong." Lisa was eager to push me out, shutting me down before I could even say a word. The next thing I knew, I was being ushered toward the hotel's grand exit. Worried I might turn back, Lisa added quickly, "Mom, Barry will be out of school soon, and no one's home. Why don't you pick him up and take him to the playground?" Mentioning my grandson, sweet little Barry, made me pause. I took a deep breath, swallowing the anger rising inside me. For now, I'd let it go. I turned away, exhaling slowly, and decided to go get Barry. At that moment, a group of young people rushed toward the hotel. In their haste, they accidentally knocked me down. One of them immediately helped me up, apologizing with a breathless smile. "Sorry, ma'am, we're late for the wedding." From a few steps ahead, his friend waved impatiently. "Hurry up! Professor Albert and Miss Kristen's wedding already started. Stop chatting with that lady. We're running late." I watched them disappear inside, their energy buzzing with excitement. The crystal chandeliers inside the hall dazzled me, making my head spin. On the massive projection screen, their wedding photo glowed brightly, the hashtag #LoveKnowsNoFear blazing below it. It felt like a slap in the face. I let out a bitter chuckle. To everyone, I was never good enough for Albert. I never measured up. But once upon a time, I should have been the one to go to school. My father had spent every last penny of our savings paying for Albert's tuition, the orphan son of his best friend. Because of that, I had to quit school. That night, I overheard my mother crying softly, trying to hold back her sobs as she told my father, "You should have let Cynthia go to college. If you don't, she'll end up like me." My father just puffed silently on his cigarette. But even then, I wasn't angry. I was happy for Albert. I rushed to him, bursting with excitement. You can go to school now. And when you come home, you can teach me everything you learn, okay? The first time Albert left for college, he kept looking back every few steps like he was weighed down by guilt. I just found it annoying. Back home, I worked harder alongside my parents, hoping that by autumn we could sell enough produce so I could buy Albert a gift. That winter, Albert once held my hand and promised, "Cynthia, don't worry. Once I graduate and get a good job, I'll bring you to live with me. We'll have a good life." But now he looked down on me for not being educated, saying we had nothing in common. He'd often tell me, "Cynthia, why don't you write a book if you have time? Learn something otherwise." I'll be embarrassed to admit my wife is uneducated and unread. Every time he said that, I thought, at my age, with a house to run, where am I supposed to find time to read? And when I refused, he'd get impatient, toss his newspaper aside, and walk out, muttering Kristen's name. "I'm going over to Kristen's for tea. Maybe I'll play chess with Frank while I'm there." Now I understood. It was never about chess with Kristen's husband, Frank. It was about seeing the woman he had always thought of as perfect. Lost in thought. I stopped in front of the kindergarten. The playground was empty. Most kids had already been picked up. Through the window, I saw Barry still inside. His teacher let out a relieved sigh when she saw me. "I couldn't reach Barry's mom. I'm so glad you came. Barry, your grandma's here to pick you up." I quickly took Barry's small hand, thanked the teacher, and led him outside to the bus stop. Barry looked up at me, sweet and expectant. "Grandma, where are we going?" I smiled. "How about the playground?" He immediately pouted. "I don't want to go. I want to go to Grandpa's wedding." I was stunned even Barry knew about their wedding. How had they explained it to a child? Did they say that his 70-year-old grandpa still couldn't let go of his first love, so he came back to her after all these years? My mind was tangled, but Barry tugged at my hand, swinging it excitedly. "Grandma, please take me. Pretty please." His bright eyes sparkled with hope. "I heard my new grandma is Kristen. Lots of my classmates like her. Now I can tell everyone my grandma's a famous writer. Maybe then they'll stop teasing me." I crouched down, took his little backpack, and smiled gently. At that moment, I made a decision. "All right," I said. "Let's go to your grandpa's wedding." On the way, Barry kept talking, his little voice full of questions. "Grandma, does this mean you won't live with us anymore?" He paused, then added, "The other day I heard Mom and Grandpa talking about sending you back to the countryside." A sharp pain squeezed my chest, but I forced a smile. "Do you want Grandma to go back to the countryside?" Barry scrunched up his face, thinking hard. Finally, he said, "If you leave, I won't get your chocolate cake anymore. But if people find out Kristen's my new grandma, they'll be so jealous," he muttered to himself, weighing the pros and cons, fully caught up in his own little world. I couldn't help but laugh, amused and exasperated. At least Barry was honest about his feelings. Unlike his mother and grandfather, who hid behind masks of righteousness, one chased after his so-called true love. The other wanted a stepmother to boost her status, and yet both blamed me. "It's all your fault," Albert had said before walking out for the last time. "If only you'd educated yourself more, none of this would have happened." Lisa agreed wholeheartedly. "Mom, don't take it so hard. Dad and Aunt Kristen are perfect for each other. Let's face it, you're just a housewife." "You had plenty of good years with Dad. Shouldn't you be grateful?" Even a child knew they wanted me gone inside. I screamed, "Dad, if you knew the son you sacrificed so much for turned out ungrateful, would you regret it?" I still remembered when Albert proposed after college. I was nervous and hesitant. "You're brilliant with a bright future. How could I be good enough? Don't marry me out of obligation. Neither my father nor I want that." But Albert looked at me sincerely. "It's not about a favor. I just feel we're perfect for each other. We'll be happy." That honest confession, I believed every word back then. Love was companionship, building a life. Trust I never imagined decades later I'd be tossed aside like an old, worn-out book. One he was ashamed to be seen with. Now, comma. There he was beside Kristen, hand in hand, basking in the crowd's admiration. The same man who once promised me a future had rewritten our story, erasing me like I never mattered. I remembered the night before our wedding. My father sat outside my door until dawn. The next morning, I found a pile of cigarette butts by his feet. He looked up and said, Don't worry, Cynthia. If Albert mistreats you, I'll stand up for you. But my father died 5 years later, never able to keep that promise with no one to protect me. Albert never held back Albert. He was the closest person I had in the world. When I arrived at the hotel, the banquet was in full swing. Albert and Kristen stood at the center, glowing as newlyweds, receiving congratulations. Barry, spotting Albert, ran to him, bursting with excitement. Grandpa, you look so handsome today. His childish voice echoed through the hall, drawing laughter. Even Barry understood this was a happy day. But no one knew the suit Albert wore, the one that made him look so distinguished, was sewn by my hands. No one noticed the single stray blue thread I stitched inside the cuff. He had once called it his lucky charm. Yet today he pulled that very suit from his closet, wore it, and married someone else. Kristen smiled gently at me. Cynthia, come sit down. Albert told me you're moving back to the countryside. What are your plans after that? Before I could speak, whispers spread among the guests. Why is she here? A plain woman with no talent managed to marry Professor Albert? She must have been brazen. Now that he's divorcing her, how can she accept it so easily? Let's be honest, she was never a match for him. Just because their fathers were friends doesn't mean she could keep him forever. Their words cut me deeply. Like countless tiny knives, memories flooded back, long buried. Despite years of marriage, Albert never let me visit his workplace, not even to bring him food or important papers. If I had to drop something off, he insisted I leave it with security, saying I was just the housekeeper. When I timidly asked him to recommend books, he coldly said, Can you even read them? Stop wasting time. If you have time for books, be in the kitchen. We're hungry. To him, I was never worthy of knowledge. If I learned, he'd lose the excuse to belittle me. Without that, how could he justify leaving? How could he justify running back to his precious first love? Mom, what are you daydreaming about? Everyone's staring. Lisa snapped me back. She sighed in frustration. Just leave already. Here, take $100, grab a cab, and go home. Don't make a scene. I'll come back after the wedding and have dinner with you, okay? Lisa pulled out the cash, ready to shove it into my hand. For years, I had been nothing but a housewife without any income of my own. Yet they controlled every penny of my allowance, making sure I never had enough to save a dime. Every expense had to be justified. Even when I was sick, I had to ask for money to see a doctor. And now, ironically, Lisa was eager to throw money at me just to make me leave. I stared at the bills in her hand and refused to take them. Lisa hesitated, confused by my reaction. Isn't that enough? She asked. Fine, I said. 300 no, 500 will that do? Before she could say another word, I slapped her across the face. The sharp slap echoed through the hall. Lisa froze, stunned, unable to respond. The entire room went silent as curious eyes turned toward us, eager to witness what would happen next. I looked her dead in the eyes. Who do you think you're talking to? My voice was cold and steady. You're trying to bribe your own mother to leave just so your father can marry his mistress without disturbance. You're just as ungrateful as he is. Lisa stood there, cheek flaming red, completely speechless. Albert and Kristen quickly stepped forward, attempting to ease the tension. Albert sighed heavily, his patience forced. Cynthia, calm down. This is my wedding. He paused, then added, Fine, I'll admit it. Your father helped me. Without him, I wouldn't have gone to college. I might have starved. But I paid that debt back long ago. I never mistreated you. Kristen's voice was gentle, almost soothing. I know this is hard for you, Cynthia, but I'm not trying to erase the past. I respect that you and Albert share a long history. Albert turned back to me, weary. So why are you still stuck in the past? Why can't you just let go? I let out a short, bitter laugh. Half of what you said is true, I replied evenly. You didn't mistreat me. I didn't starve under your roof, but while you chased after research grants, most of that money went straight to Kristen and her family. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I pressed on, my voice firm. After I gave birth to Lisa, you stopped sharing a bed with me. No, more than that, you stopped sharing a room. You said you needed quiet to focus on your research, that you didn't want to disturb me or Lisa's sleep. Even when Lisa was away, you refused to come near me. I met his gaze and tilted my head. Now I finally understand why. The whispers grew louder. You weren't protecting your focus, I said coldly. You were saving yourself for Kristen. A stunned silence fell before the crowd erupted into whispers again. Oh my God, is she serious? I thought Albert was trapped in his first marriage. But if he wasn't in love with her, how could he be married for so long? To treat his wife like that, silent for decades, that's just cruel. Albert's face darkened, fists clenched, his body trembling with rage. This is humiliating, he muttered. How could you say this in front of everyone? I raised an eyebrow. Oh, now you care about your dignity? I stepped closer, my voice sharp and unwavering. You've had decades of dignity, Albert. Where was it when you were sneaking behind Frank's back? When you and Kristen were running your little affair behind her husband's back? The banquet hall exploded with gasps, whispers, and scandalized murmurs. Albert's hand shot up, finger nearly poking my face, his whole body shaking with fury. You foolish woman. Don't you have any shame? Saying things like that in public. I cut him off smoothly. Yes, I'm foolish. I smiled slowly, deliberately. But at least I know the difference between right and wrong. My eyes flicked between him and Kristen. Unlike you two. Albert was practically shaking now, face flushed with anger. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Decades ago, on a quiet evening, my father came home with a boy in tow. He told us the child was the son of a dear friend, a man who had once saved his life. I can't just leave him alone, he said. From that night, Albert lived with us. My mother was a simple, kind woman who never questioned my father's decisions. She just followed his lead. But our small town was filled with gossip. Rumors spread like wildfire. Are you sure that boy isn't your husband's bastard? Maybe he's the child of his mistress. Whenever my mother heard those whispers, she stormed to the door, hands on hips, ready to fight. Who's running their mouth? My man is nothing like that. Go home and watch your own husbands before they start cheating. She was fierce and unyielding, but when she turned back to Albert, her expression softened. She smiled and said, Don't worry, sweetheart. As long as I'm here, no one will bully you. And like my mother, I fought tooth and nail for Albert. Anyone who spoke badly of him soon found themselves on the receiving end of my fists. Even the biggest boys in town knew better than to cross me. Say one more word about Albert and I'll smash your skull with a rock. Back then, I never imagined it would end like this. That after all those years, I'd realize I'd wasted my life on a fraud. Albert's voice snapped me back to now, cold as ice. I've told you, I'm spending the rest of my life with Kristen. No matter how much you make a scene, it won't change a thing. Instead of embarrassing yourself, hold on to what dignity you have left. I spat at his feet. I don't care who you spend your life with. I never said you couldn't move on, but our divorce isn't finalized, and you've already thrown yourself a wedding. My voice dripped with mockery. Tell me, who here really lacks dignity? I stepped forward, eyes locked on his. You want a divorce? Fine. But I won't accept your terms. My voice sharpened. I gave everything to this marriage, and now you want to toss me aside with nothing. Do you think I'm too stupid or uneducated to see how unfair that is? Kristen let out a low, contemptuous laugh, eyes full of scorn. Cynthia, she sneered, we're not asking you to leave with nothing. It's just that keeping a household this long has been costly, and there's not much left. But don't worry. When you move back to the countryside, Albert will send you a living allowance. I'll even help cover renovations on your old house. Her words stirred the crowd. Murmurs turned to open disdain. Oh, so it's all about money figures. I knew she wouldn't let go easily. What a schemer clinging to him for dear life after he's moved on. I let out a cold, bitter laugh. I thought I was surrounded by intellectuals, I said slowly, voice dripping with irony. Turns out you're just as ignorant as they are. My gaze swept the crowd. You're no different from these two ungrateful, self-righteous hypocrites. I laughed softly, then turned back to Kristen and Albert, my smile sharp as a knife. You want to play it like this? Fine. I lifted my chin. I'll see you in court. I may be 70, but I've lived long enough to see clearly. At least I can say I understood life before it ended. I didn't argue further. I turned and went home. While they celebrated, I packed. That's when I realized I had almost nothing, one suitcase, barely half full. When I finished, I dragged it to the front door. Just as they returned, Lisa was first to speak. Mom, you can stay at the house a while if you want. We're leaving for a short trip anyway. Her tone was casual, as if we hadn't just faced off in battle. Kristen's new book launch was in the next city, and they planned to turn it into a trip. I never expected Lisa to be so close to Kristen. I chuckled softly and shook my head. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful trip. I wasn't angry, didn't argue. That unsettled them more than anything. Albert cleared his throat carefully. Cynthia, I know you're reasonable. Just don't do anything foolish, okay? Even Lisa, who had always shown thinly veiled contempt, looked uneasy. Where are you going? She asked. I'll drive you. Lisa had never offered to drive me anywhere. Even when I asked for a ride to the market, she refused, too embarrassed that her scholar father's illiterate wife would be seen. Yet today, she suddenly volunteered. Guilt, maybe? I looked at her, expression unreadable. That won't be necessary, I said evenly. You should stay and bond with your new mother. You'll need her influence if you want to climb the social ladder. My words dripped with sarcasm. Lisa's lips parted to speak, but I didn't wait. I turned and walked out without a second glance. That night, I saw Lisa's latest post online, a family portrait. In the photo, Lisa leaned close to Kristen, faces pressed like mother and daughter. If Kristen had a biological daughter, she wouldn't look different. But Kristen couldn't have children. She'd fallen gravely ill when young, and the illness left her infertile. Frank, however, had adored her, loving her even more after her sickness. Fiercely, devotedly, never wavering. Yet, thinking of Frank's love, all I felt was pity. If Kristen had never given Albert hope, he wouldn't have proposed as soon as Frank died. The truth was clear. They'd been involved long before Frank passed. I contacted a lawyer to draft a new divorce agreement. After hearing my story, he was furious. Ma'am, you must expose him as the cheating party. Otherwise, if he claims he supported you all these years, it'll hurt your case in dividing assets. Following his advice, I recorded a video for social media. In it, I told everything. The decades with Albert, my sacrifices, and how I was being discarded like trash. I don't want him back. I just want what I'm owed. My lawyer insisted I add that last line. At first, I worried. After all, many guests had called me shameless for showing up at the wedding. Surely the internet would tear me apart, worse. But to my surprise, the response was different. Wait, isn't this the woman from the high-profile wedding? The original wife? Grandma, you did right. Fight for your rights. You gave up everything for him, and now he wants to toss you aside? No way! Comments poured in, and tides began to turn. It's not just about money. She gave up her education, devoted her life to the family, and now he wants to send her to the countryside with nothing that's cruel. As the video spread, my phone rang. Albert, I answered, already knowing. Cynthia! His voice rushed, tense. You want money? Fine, I'll give it to you. Just stop encouraging people to attack Kristen. Do you know she's been crying until her eyes are swollen? Behind him, I heard Barry's small voice choking back tears. Grandma's bad. Grandma only wants money. Grandma's bad. If this had been before, those words would have broken me. Now, I just smiled calmly. I've had my lawyer draft a new agreement, I said. Sign it, and once we're divorced, I won't bring this up again. Albert was silent for a long moment, then exhaled. Fine. And hung up. Just when I thought it was over, Lisa posted on social media. My mother's been a housewife all her life, but she's domineering Dad, and I suffered because of her. In her video, she hinted Dad cheated, but how? He's 70. He spent his life trapped in a hopeless marriage. When he felt time running out, he finally asked for a divorce. And just then, Aunt Kristen became a widow. Two young lovers reunited in their twilight years. What's wrong with that? Her words sparked another wave of debate. This time, it wasn't just about me. Men feeling trapped in their marriages rushed to defend Albert. I get it. A domineering wife suffocates. After a hard day, a man just wants peace at home. If your wife's too strong-willed, life becomes unbearable. Kristen is gentle. She and Albert are a better match. And just like that, the tide turned against me again. They labeled me an overbearing old woman making a fuss over nothing. Not a single one of them cared about the truth. Lisa even sent me a message mocking me. I told you, didn't I? Stop fighting, just go back to the countryside and live out your days in peace. With Lisa publicly defending Albert, he seized the opportunity to back away. The man who had once been eager to settle was now avoiding me. My lawyer couldn't reach him. Calls went unanswered. Frustration thickened his voice. Ma'am, your daughter. She's something else, doesn't she realize what you've been through? You devoted your whole life to this family, and this is how they repay you? Don't worry, I will win this case for you. Meanwhile, as public opinion shifted in their favor, Kristen staged a grand display of triumph. At a book signing, she made a pointed remark clearly aimed at me. A woman, no matter her age, is always a rose meant to be cherished, and if she isn't loved, perhaps she was never a rose worth loving to begin with. The crowd applauded her poetic words. Oblivious to the poison beneath them, I let out a cold laugh. She truly believed she'd won. Just when everyone thought I was defeated, I found an unexpected ally willing to testify for me. Frank's nephew, Patrick. Frank, never had biological children, but he loved kids deeply. He poured his affection into Patrick. When Frank took his final breath, Kristen wasn't by his side. Patrick was. Patrick sent me a video. Hello, everyone, I'm Patrick Wilson, Kristen's nephew by name. But really, my uncle was Frank Wilson, Kristen's husband, or should I say, ex-husband now, since she wasted no time marrying someone else after his death. Since I was young, I loved photography. My uncle supported me. He even bought me my first camera. With that camera, I captured something I wished I hadn't seen. Kristen with other men. For years, I wrestled with what to do. Should I tell my uncle? Should I break his heart? But before I could decide, he was gone. And I can't help but wonder, was Kristen to blame? She had been emotionally distant for years, and my uncle grew more despondent. And Kristen, she never hid her affairs. These photos are decades old, but clear enough to tell the truth. Among those men was Albert. Even I didn't expect their long entanglement. The video ended, I called Patrick, thanking him repeatedly. On the other end, he was silent before finally sighing. Ma'am, you and my uncle are alike. Both good people, I refuse to let you suffer as he did. Some may grow old, but their character rots. People like that don't deserve respect. No sooner had I hung up than Lisa's message popped up. You froze all the family assets. How are we supposed to live now? Right after Albert called, his voice agitated. Cynthia, how could you go through with suing me? Do you want to ruin my reputation? I didn't dignify him with an answer. Patrick's video had sparked a storm. Public opinion flipped again. My lawyer issued an official statement. Mrs. Cynthia has formally filed for divorce. The only dispute remaining is asset division. She dedicated her life to this family, only to be betrayed and left with nothing. This is unjust. As her attorney, I will protect her legal rights and take action against those spreading false accusations. More voices emerged. Former neighbors, Albert's colleagues, even a young woman once Kristen's devoted fan. I used to admire Kristen, she said, but after learning the truth, I can't believe I ever saw her as inspiring. Those words carried weight. Kristen's books were pulled from shelves. Several publishers cut ties, releasing statements. Integrity matters as much as talent. We value literature, but morality equally. Both are indispensable. Then one evening, a knock at my door. I opened it to find Albert and Kristen. Kristen's knees buckled at the sight of me. She nearly collapsed. Cynthia, please, I can't take this anymore. I'm begging you. Let us go. Let this end. Albert stood, his face flushed with humiliation. Silence stretched before he finally murmured, If you leave Kristen alone, I'll come back. We can go back to how things were. I stared for a moment, then let out a short laugh. You really think too highly of yourself, don't you? His eyes flickered. You believe I'm doing all this to win you back? I smirked. Albert, the day you asked for a divorce was the day I stopped considering you my husband. I'm not trying to win you back. I'm taking what I deserve. For me and my parents who sacrificed so much for you. Albert's face darkened. Kristen, still kneeling, sobbed quietly. I lightly nudged her foot. Caught off guard, she stumbled and looked up in shock. Despite their slander calling me aggressive and domineering, I never laid a hand on any of them. I endured everything without retaliation. But now, I was done. I looked down and smiled coldly. Enough with the act. We both know you don't mean a word of that apology. Her breath hitched. She knew it too. At this point, staying with Albert was her only option. Without him, she had nothing. Not even someone to care for her in old age. And Albert, I knew him too well. He was already plotting his next move. Sure enough, he cleared his throat, softer this time. Cynthia, I really do regret everything. Let's put this behind us, okay? At that moment, Lisa's name flashed on my phone. Mom, Dad, and Kristen came to see you. Are you talking? Dad says they're here to apologize. I typed back, yes, your parents are here. Your mom is crying, Lisa responded instantly. What? My mom isn't. You're not crying. I stared at the message a moment, then chuckled coldly. They really were shameless. Without hesitation, I blocked Lisa's number. Our mother-daughter relationship was over. Half an hour after Albert and Kristen left, my lawyer called. Albert agreed to sign the divorce papers, he said. I wasn't surprised. Albert had spent his life obsessed with reputation. No way would he drag a divorce to court at 70, especially not against a woman who had once been his benefactor's daughter. The settlement was simple. The house stayed his. Aside from cash in our accounts, he'd pay me an additional $300, 000. Not a fortune, but all he could offer. With that money, I bought land in the countryside and built a farmhouse restaurant. I grew vegetables, raised chickens and ducks, and slowly, word spread about my little retreat. People loved the quiet, the clean, pesticide-free produce, the fresh eggs. Over time, my business gained a reputation, attracting more visitors. On Thanksgiving, while reviewing accounts, a young woman hesitantly approached. Excuse me, ma'am, she whispered. Are you that brave divorce grandma? Curiosity and admiration shone in her eyes. It took me a moment. Then I smiled and nodded. She lit up. A former student of Albert's and fan of Kristen's books, she admitted feeling disillusioned after the scandal, unsure whom to trust. But when I heard your story, she said, I felt inspired. You proved that even at 70, you can start anew. You're incredibly brave. Through her, I learned of Albert and Kristen's downfall. The scandal left a permanent stain. Albert, still working under a special contract post-retirement, was terminated quietly. The university removed his portrait, erasing his legacy. Kristen's books vanished from shelves. Lisa had planned to use Kristen's name to climb socially and professionally. But that dream crumbled. Without Kristen's influence, Lisa had nothing to leverage. Her resentment toward Kristen grew even harsher than toward me. Months passed, and Lisa's life unraveled. The social circles she chased saw through her ambitions. Her masked admiration turned to bitterness as her plans collapsed. Career opportunities dried up. Rejections piled on. Strained ties with Kristen and Albert deepened her isolation. The higher she aimed, the further she fell. One evening, Lisa called me, voice tense, words barely a whisper. Mom, I messed up. I've lost everything. I stayed silent, feeling no satisfaction, only quiet acceptance that she faced her consequences. I told you, I said softly. You can't climb on others' backs to get ahead. What you wanted to take has left you with nothing. She didn't reply. The silence was thick with regret. I knew there was nothing left to say. She had to live with her choices. As for me, life grew into the peace I'd imagined in youth. Quiet days at my countryside retreat replaced suffocating years chasing approval from those who never valued me. I built a life that was mine, free from manipulation, betrayal, and unspoken expectations. I spent days tending the farm, experimenting with recipes, and meeting other women who, like me, reinvented themselves later in life. The satisfaction of hard work flourishing was more fulfilling than any status or recognition I'd sought. I realized happiness wasn't about proving others wrong or revenge. It was about creating a space to truly be myself. Looking back, I'd paid a steep price for these lessons, but never felt more at peace with who I was and the life I built. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I stood on the porch and knew this was the start of something better, something all my own. And that was enough.